legendary, iconic jazz musician, Louis Armstrong. A lot of people know him as Satchmo. So for me, it's very important for me to take time out and speak to youth groups such as you guys so that you can learn and know that broadcasting is serious. For me, it's that much more serious because I feel I have to fill the shoes of Satchmo in my own way. I love music, I do music, but it's not my passion. Broadcasting is my passion, but I still have to represent his legacy very well. So what I would like to speak to you guys about, I have several different points that I just kind of emailed to myself. As Jamaica told me, you guys concentrate on radio broadcasting, correct? Well, I told her I believe that radio and television broadcasting, it goes hand in hand. Definitely when you're doing interviews, because you're still asking questions, and the format should always be the same, whether it's television or whether it's radio. So if you have any questions after I, go through the point, so if anyone wants to stop me to get clarification for anything, by all means, just say, hey, Antriece, however you guys want to do it, okay? Okay, so we're just basically going to talk about some broadcasting etiquette. Whether you are on radio or television, this is very important. You should always know your subject. Whatever the subject is, whatever the topic may be for that interview, you better know it backwards, forwards, up, and down. You should know so much about this subject that you should be able to bring out pointers that your interviewee may not even know. So you really have to do your homework, per se, when it comes to interviewing someone about a specific topic or a specific subject, okay? Also, I think it's very important for you to know your interviewee. I'm the interviewer. If I'm speaking to you, you're the interviewee. You need to know your interviewee. You need to know why she is relevant, why she's sitting in front of you today doing this interview. Because if I'm interviewing someone, you best believe they are very relevant. And you need to know why they are relevant, okay? I think that's very, very important for you guys to know. I think it's also in regards to relevancy and why someone is relevant or why their work may be relevant. I think you need to know your interviewee as well. You need to know the point of views that your interviewee may have about certain subjects. Let's say if we're talking about education within the public school system. Well, what is her point of view about that? You should already know the subject and already know the interviewee when you sit down with them. That's very important so that you can effectively ask relevant questions, okay? One thing that's pretty interesting when you do interviews, you always ask the questions, but you have to also control the pace of the interview. Some people are long-winded. I'm long-winded, okay? But I'm the interviewer, so I can be long-winded. However, you have to make sure that you control the pace of the interview, control the pace of the conversation. You know, some people may go all the way to left field and you got to reel them back into what you guys were originally talking about. So it's very important for you to stay in control of the interview. That's something that's very, very important, you guys, okay? I put this on my point list. Do not ask open-ended questions. Ask questions that they absolutely have to give you an answer to. I think that's very important. You want to make sure that you're asking questions in such a way that is either yes or no, or is yes with an explanation or no with an explanation. That's very, very important because you want to get straight to the meat of whatever the subject is about, okay? I think that it is okay to ask tough questions, since I do it all the time. People may not like the fact that you ask a tough question, but guess what? You have to ask questions in such a manner as if you're the listener, or as if you're the person that's out in the audience. So you're basically asking questions as if you're that person sitting out in the audience going, now I wish he'd go ahead and ask him, why did he do X, Y, and Z? You have to ask questions that the people would want you to ask, okay? That's very, very important, because you want to make sure not only are you communicating with the interviewee, but it has to be very relevant, and the information has to also relate to your listening audience. So that's very important, you guys. One thing I think that you guys should definitely know, you have to build a rapport almost instantaneously with the individual that you're interviewing. If I come and interview you and I sit right down beside you, I need to have everything showing, if that makes sense. I need to have my personality showing. I need to have my smile showing. I need to have my hand ready for a handshake, because you have to be able to build a rapport. What you see is also what you get. If I come in and I'm seemingly just, in a funky mood, and I'm just really seeming like I don't want to be bothered, but I sit down and want to ask you these tough questions, it's like, well, she seems to really be in a bad mood. I might not really want to open up to her the way that I intended to, because of the rapport that you're giving off. So it's very, very important to be very polite. You always introduce yourself. For me, hi, I'm Miss Antriece with Heirs of Legends Media. I'll be interviewing you today. And you say it with a smile and a firm handshake, and you sit down and you begin to ask the questions that you want to ask. So just keep in mind that you have to build a rapport instantly, because that will carry you out. It'll carry you throughout your interview, and after the interview is over with. You always want to build relationships with the people that you interview. You want them to respect your craft. And that respect comes with the rapport that you build with these individuals, okay? Always know your audience. I put that on here. You always want to know your listening audience. You want to know your demographics, okay? Let's say if someone is doing a country radio station, you want to know what your demographics are. You want to know who you're reaching, okay? That's very, very important, because you want to make sure that everything stays relevant to your listeners, all the way to the questions that you may be asking on air to whomever you're interviewing, okay? Yes, sir.
Is there ever a way to know the limits of your interviewee, like to keep from asking a question that's like too close to being personal or past that certain boundary that they can answer?
Well, I will say this. Sometimes a lot of people may ask me to send questions in advance. Me personally, I do not. The reason I do not is because I do not want any of my interviews to come across as scripted. But I will say it will be along the lines of this, or it'll be along the theme of that. I will give them a roundabout of what type of questions. I may be asking you questions about your legacy, or I may be asking you questions about the Super Bowl that you guys won last year. I will give them a roundabout, but if you're truly, truly concerned about that, if it's something that you do want to ask, you may want to, prior to the interview, pull them to the side and say, hey, I was really thinking about asking you questions in regards to X, Y, and Z. Are you comfortable with that? Okay, but again, keep in mind, sometimes questions may be tough to ask, and it may come across as personal, but you have to ask relevant questions, okay? And a lot of times, it's really not about what you ask, it's the way that you ask it, the tone that you ask it. You know, I interview NBA as well, so I interview a lot of the basketball players. I interviewed Blake Griffin, and I asked him, I said, you know, you've been this basketball star that you are, you're Blake Griffin, and you're dunking over cars and this whole type of thing. You know, if you wasn't playing basketball, what else would you be doing? Would it be another sport? Would you be a doctor? Would you be a firefighter? And he says, Antriece, you know what? That's a really good question. I would be a football player. Because there was nothing else I did other than sports. So if I would have asked it in such a manner of, well, Blake, I know you play basketball, and I know you making a lot of money, but can you tell me what else you want to do, or that you might want to do? You see the difference? It's all about the tone, and it's all about the approach. But if it's something you're concerned about, to where because you clearly, you never want to offend anyone, right, your interviewee. You never want to offend them. So if it's something that's really that serious that you feel it may make an awkward situation, anything that's awkward is going to show up on camera, and you're going to be able to hear it on the air for radio as well. So if you want to just kind of, pull them to the side and say, hey, I was thinking about, bringing up this incident that happened, or that incident, are you comfortable with it? Me personally, again, I don't do that, because you don't want it to come across as scripted. Okay, but some people do it. Tomato, potato. So to each his own, but that is an approach that you can take. Okay.
I have a question.
So
So you wanted to ask something, it's relevant, but it's like controversial. How would you ask that without, offending your, or any too personal?
that is a really good question. I've asked a lot of questions that people probably wish that I didn't ask, because it is controversial. But basically, again, it's more so you sticking to your guns. You have to ask relevant questions. You have to do it. I mean, it's one of those things where if I'm not asking relevant questions to the people who are relevant, why is it relevant for the audience to listen to me? You understand what I'm saying? So the way that you can ask a controversial question is, hey, I know that you've had this thing going on in the media, it's been showing you tweets and this and that, but hey, I have to ask you, why this or why that, or why did you decide to go this route or go that route? Can you explain that to the listeners, please? So it's all about your approach. Now, if you say, hey, you got some controversy going on, I need you to clean the air up about it. Then that's when it's the awkwardness, because of the tone and the way you approach the controversy. You have to be very mindful of your body language when you're speaking and interviewing to people, because the way that we read the interviewee and read the subject, they're reading us too. So it's very important to know that if you're going to ask a controversial question, be mindful of the tone and the way that you ask it. Okay? I think it's very important to always dress accordingly. Now, of course, in radio, nobody can see you unless you have a blog and you're videotaping live, live streaming, something of that nature. But even with television, and even sometimes with radio, the short period of time that I did radio, me just being who I am, I always still wanted to be dressed for the people that I was in front of, because first impressions are everything, and you never know where your next moment of opportunity may come from. Okay, so it's very important to always be presentable, and you want to be presentable according to your interviewee. Example, if I interview Kid Rock, clearly I'm not going to come in dressed like I'm going to church, okay? Because we know Kid Rock, he's a rocker. So sometimes it's okay to outfit yourself accordingly to the individual that you're interviewing. I interviewed Mary Mary. They're a gospel duo. They're fun. They're spunky. So of course I came in a cute, like, baby doll dress. Okay, not over the top, but it didn't look like I was necessarily going to church either.